What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. My name is Josh, and today I'm going to be going over my top 10 books of 2025. Now, I only have two rules for myself. The first one being only one book per author, and the second being no rereads. So rereads cannot count, which I don't even know if I did any rereads this past year. I don't think that I did. I don't have any honorable mentions because it would have given away some others in the list. I would have said, some duplicates of authors, but I don't want to give anything away. So without any further ado, let's start with number 10. So number 10 on this list is going to be, I need to know the author, I guess, don't I? So number 10 on this list is going to be The Boy in the Striped Pajamas by John Boyne. Yeah, this book is going to emotionally wreck some people. It did me. It's a fantastic story. Obviously, it's historical fiction. I actually got a lot of flack for reading this book this past year. People said that it was sympathizing with Nazis and all this other stuff. I don't think that could be any farther from the truth. It is more of a story of childhood, humanity, and how people can believe their own lies in order to justify some wicked means. If you guys have seen the movie, the book follows fairly closely to the movie, but the book far surpasses it. There are little genius things in this book that set it apart from many others that I've read that are kind of like it. One of which is the little boy, in order to articulate that he doesn't actually understand what's going on, he refers to his father being a soldier and that he works for some guy that they call the Fury, which obviously we know that doesn't translate because it's in German and blah, 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 blah. Yes, you can use all the arguments, but it was a very neat writing device that the author used to convey that he doesn't really understand what's going on. He doesn't really understand who his father is or who it is that he's working for. So those little things sort of set it above and apart from many of these other historical fiction books that I've read. But the emotional impact that this book had on me is what pushed it so high up on the list for me. This is one of those books that's going to stick with you, that you'll chew on for a while and you'll find yourself thinking about much later. So that's why it's number 10 on the list. Book number 9 is going to be Guard in the Garden by Z.S. Diamani. So this is a cozy fantasy book. It's the first and only cozy fantasy book that I've read at the time of recording this. It was fantastic. One of the best fantasy stories that I've read, and not because the story itself was epic in scale or because really there was even a lot going on, but it's because it pulled me out of a reading slump that I was in where I just found myself not even having the desire to pick up a book at all. So this was, I just kind of picked it up as a palate cleanser, and man, did it do the job. It was such a wholesome, heartwarming story of character development and love and empathy with numerous types of people that have been through tragedies, people that are suffering with PTSD. And it just kind of gives you a glimpse into some of those things, but it doesn't dwell on the negativity, which is what I love. It really shines a light on goodness, on love, on grace and mercy. And so this book it hit all the right notes for me at the time. And so that's why it's number 9 on the list. Number 8 on the list is going to be Academy of Outcasts by Larry Correia. Now, this is book 1 in a new fantasy series that Larry is writing, and it's actually my favorite book that I've read of Larry's so far. So at the time of recording this, I've read 3 of his Monster Hunter novels, this one, and a graphic novel, which is American Paladin Dust Sacrifice. And this, I think, blows everything else out of the water. Now, Monster Hunter is really good. That's not to detract from Monster Hunter or me to say anything negative about Monster Hunter. It's just so completely different. And so I describe this as like if you were to take Mistborn and Guardians of the Galaxy and put your hands together, that's kind of what you've got here. And I think that's a fair description. I think anybody that loves those two things and maybe playing with those two things with, you have some of that comedy that you get from Guardians of the Galaxy, but there's really serious moments and that epic world building that you get from Brandon Sanderson. I think you're really going to love this series. So if Guardians of the Galaxy meets Mistborn sounds like something that you would like, I highly recommend you pick this up. I would actually recommend this as the first read for most people if they're trying to get into Larry Correa. So Academy of Outcasts was unique. It was great to see. It's sort of like Portal Fantasy. And so you can see that Larry has built himself a huge playground, and he's going to be able to use these individual characters in these different settings in a very unique way. So I'm really looking forward to see what he has to offer in book 2. It'll probably be a day 1 read for me. So if you guys are interested in Larry Correa's writings, I highly recommend you pick up Academy of Outcasts, because I think there's a lot there to love for a vast audience. So book number 7 on this list is going to be These Silent Woods by Kimmy Cunningham Grant. Now this was a gift from Jordan over at First Line Library, and I had it for a few months and was kind of waiting for that autumnal / winter read, because if you see the cover, which I'll put up somewhere right here, the cover really gives those feelings of seclusion, of wilderness. And so it's one of those books that I kind of wanted to just curl up on the couch and sink my teeth into. So I really wanted to wait until about that time, and I read it at the perfect time. This book was fantastic. There's not a whole lot that goes on in this book either. It's really character focused on about 4, maybe 5 characters total. Now there are others that are sprinkled in there, but we are predominantly following about 4 characters that are all in a very small vicinity. So this story is an excellent character study of a man that will do anything to protect his daughter. So for me, like I said before, this hit all of those right notes, especially as a girl dad. I think this is really going to push some people over the edge as far as it going from a good book to a great book. So I read it at the right time, in the right place, in the right frame of mind, and needed that palate cleanse. Sort of needed to step away from sci-fi and fantasy for just a bit, and this was excellent. The pacing is perfect. It's the exact right page count. There isn't a page wasted. So I cannot recommend enough These Silent Woods by Kimmy Cunningham Grant, and I cannot thank Jordan enough for sending it to me, because I've already gotten a couple of other people to read it, and they've loved it just as much as I have. So book number 6 on this list is going to be a little bit of a curveball, and it is Lost Boy by Christina Henry. Now, this came highly recommended to me by Zachary Shea over at Shea's Library. So you guys go and check him out. So Zach recommended this book in a group discussion that we had, and I'd heard him mention it several times, and he said this is like a grimdark retelling of Peter Pan from the perspective of Captain Hook. And it follows Captain Hook as being the first lost boy. So he's the first boy that Peter chose to bring to Neverland. And it shows why their relationship imploded. It started out as being all fun and games, and then James Hook realized very quickly that Peter didn't care anything about the boys. The only thing that he cared about was that he had some sort of new toy, somebody to play with, and once their usefulness ran out, he didn't care if they survived. And so it fell to James, or Jamie in this instance, it fell to him to watch over the boys, to take care of them, to make sure that they're fed, because Peter was off, pillaging the pirates, or he was off going on adventures and slaying monsters and all of the fun things that boys would want to do, while these other boys were left destitute, especially if Peter thought that their usefulness ran out. So this was fantastic. It will completely change the way that you see Peter Pan, and I think it will have a lasting effect for anybody that loves the story of Peter Pan, or anybody that grew up with the movie Hook like I did. I think you're absolutely going to love this. It does get a little bit dark at times, but man, it is my favorite version of the Peter Pan story, so I highly recommend it. Book number 5 on this list is going to be a new author to me this year, and that is Weird Space by A.M. Wiley. So this book, and I think there's sort of a common thread here with my list, is that I was looking a little bit for a palate cleanse. I was looking for a quick read. I was looking to reach for something a little bit different, maybe something that I had not heard a lot about at the time. And this one actually also came recommended to me by Jordan over at First Line Library. And the reason why I had to pick it up is because of the cover of book 2. Jordan kept showing off this cover, and it looked so cool that it just sucked me in. So I was like, okay, I got to figure out what this story's about. I know it's an indie author. And so I started looking into it. And I think the author, Mr. Wiley, I think he describes it as like Stranger Things meets E.T. And I think that's a pretty fair description. So you sort of follow that ragtag crew, kind of like the Goonies. And I think it really has a lot of similarities to the Goonies. It's just a sci-fi story. So you're following this ragtag group that have discovered a spaceship and extraterrestrial life, and they are trying to come to her assistance, come to her aid in her time of need, because the galaxy is not only in danger, but the galaxy is about to be destroyed by a big bad. It's down to a group of like preteens and teenagers to not just save the world, but to save the galaxy. It was so much fun. It was like, I think it was around 250 pages, super fast pace. I mean, it is pedal to the metal. It is foot on the gas the entire way, and it really doesn't let up. But there are a few moments there where everything just sort of slows down, where you can kind of take that breath and you build that character development with Drew and his father in particular. So you still do get that character development within the story without losing out on just an awesome, fun ride. So if you like things like Stranger Things, The Goonies, E.T., The Last Starfighter, those kind of movies, there's a bit of coming of age there, but with a sci-fi spin, it is just fantastic. And I think you will absolutely love this. Plus, I have read, at the time of recording this, I have read both Weird Space books that are currently out and The Heart Taker by A.M. Wiley. All of them are fantastic books. They are all great palate cleansers. It's a great entry point for anybody that's looking to get into reading at all, especially science fiction or fantasy. So I think this is a great entry point for a lot of people. It would make a great gift for a lot of people. It's very accessible as far as the writing style goes, so it's not really a daunting task. And it's also one of those stories that I think will pull a lot of people in. So there's a lot here to love, not to mention the author is fantastic. He's a good friend and brother. So I cannot recommend these books enough, not to mention they're clean. So there's not language in here. There's no provocative scenes. None of that kind of stuff is steeped into this work. Mr. Wiley just wanted to write an incredible story. And I think he did a fantastic job of that. And that's why it's so high up on the list. So book number 4 is probably going to come as a bit of a surprise for most of you. But I based this list solely on how much enjoyment I got out of the book at the time. And so if I'm being objective here, book number 4 is going to be Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Now, I know a lot of you are like, oh, with how you had to end the series. I DNF'd the series at the 3rd book. I know a lot of you are probably like, well, I can't believe it. You would even have this on the list or whatever. That's fine. And I had a lot of fun reading that book. So Red Rising was one of those books that had been recommended to me time and time again. I did some research on it a couple of years ago and knew there was some gratuitous stuff in there a little bit. So I just tried to err on the side of caution and stayed away from it. Had some good friends of mine tell me that if I could not really overlook or look past that stuff, because that's not what they were doing either, but they were like, it's part of the world building that I think you'll really love this series, especially book 1. And they were absolutely right. I absolutely loved Red Rising. This is one of those books that I did not want to put down. This is one of those books that I was willing to give up, watching TV or any kind of movies, and didn't even really want to do any work at the time because I wanted to finish the story. It was so good. It was so hardcore too. So it's sort of like 300 and Battle Royale on Mars. It's kind of the best way that I can describe it. It is fantastic. It is such a good book. However, I do have to add in the disclaimer that yes, I did have to DNF book 3 and DNF the series. It just got a little too heavy on some of the same-sex stuff for me personally, so I stepped away from it. But it's a pretty brutal ride. So know that ahead of time, because you may get to this book and be like, well, Josh recommended it and it's not all sunshine and rainbows. As a matter of fact, there's very little of that in here at all. But it is such a killer story. So Red Rising, as far as just enjoyment goes, it's got to make it not only on the list, but that's why it's so high up on the list. It's number 4, and it probably could have been higher. I will say that, some people may say, well, did you like Golden Sun better? I like them about the same. So you could put Red Rising or Golden Sun here. The Iron Rain, it's the scene that I think everybody talks about. It's fantastic. Yeah, those two are interchangeable here at number 4, but just for the sake of argument, I guess if I had to pick one, it would probably be Red Rising. Okay, so book number 3 on this list is going to be Ordinary Grace by William Kent Kruger. Now, this is a coming of age story. This is just a fictional story. It is not sci-fi and fantasy, which, as I'm looking at the list, there's not, I think about half of them are sci-fi and fantasy, and the other half really is just fiction or mysteries or historical fiction, which is a bit surprising to me, but Ordinary Grace by William Kent Kruger follows the story of a little boy named Frank, who is the son of a Methodist minister and lives in a small town in Minnesota. And he is recounting his summer that was filled with tragedy. It was filled with murder. It was filled with suicide. It was filled with just death and all different kinds of atrocities in this small town that's sort of just like Main Street, USA. And then how this family is coping with these things because it impacts them significantly and firsthand. And there are several reasons why it's so high up on the list, one of which is that I've never seen the perspective of a pastor written so well. Most of the time when you're reading stories that include a pastor, he's either a bumbling idiot or he is some like stone-hearted prude. And there's almost no in between. So you either have the one that's just this bumbling idiot that really doesn't know what he's talking about, that makes himself look like a fool, and is not the leader of his household, is not the spiritual head of his household, all of those kind of things. That's sort of one end of the spectrum. And the other end is that it's just this cruel individual who lacks sympathy and empathy for others. He's really just here for piety or for notoriety. And yeah, that never works well, in my opinion. But this book, in my opinion, portrayed the position of a pastor better than any other fictional work that I've ever read. So Nathan Drum is one of my favorite characters of all time at this point because of this book. But along with that, we follow all the different members of the family, some of the things that they're wrestling with and struggling with. So this is a huge character study that has some major events happen around it. And it is such a book of grace, mercy, and love. And not only that, this book is the only book on this list that and really probably the only book I've ever read, where I got to a point that was so heavy and I was so invested in the story that when a certain event happened, I had to close the book and put it down and couldn't come back to it for a little over a day. So just maybe, it's not for the faint of heart, but this is one of the best books that I've ever read. So as far as like just standalones go, you guys know how much I love Boy's Life. It may be my favorite book, like singular novel of all time, and this rivals it. It's right up there with it. Again, I still think that Boy's Life maybe ekes it out a little bit because of that ending, but this one is just different. So if you're looking for something that is sort of Boy's Life-esque, I think this is a great place to go. And from what I understand, the author has several other books that are very similar in nature. So I do plan on picking some others up this coming year. Ordinary Grace, I did not find a single flaw with this book. It is fantastic. So that's why it is number 3 on the list. So number 2 on this list is going to be The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I really wanted this to be number 1. I really wanted this to be the greatest story that I've ever read. But I did have a couple of little nitpicky issues with it. However, I don't want to start out negative, so I will say that this is one of the greatest stories that I've ever read. It is, as far as like classics go, it's probably my favorite. Most of us sort of know, we either know the story or we know about the story, that it is a tale of revenge. It is the perfect tale of revenge. But there are some things that I was hoping I would see that I didn't. And there were some things that were included that I wasn't really crazy about. Part of it is how it was written. Again, you guys can go and do your own homework and see how this was originally published. And so Dumas was paid either by word or by line. And so there's quite a bit of fluff here. So that's why I recommend the abridged version, because I think if I would have read the abridged version, I would have had a lot better time with it. I am glad that I read it as is, but I don't think when I revisit it that I will read the unedited version, because there's a lot of lines that are repeated. There's a lot of dialogue that is repeated back and forth between characters. And it's so that Dumas could make a living. And I understand that, and I don't blame him. With that being said, Faria, the Abby Faria is one of my favorite characters of all time. My favorite part of this book was actually my wife's least favorite part of the book, which is when he is at the Chateau d'If. It is, for me, I, I, I think it's some of the best, it might be the best writing that I've ever read. I loved the interaction between him and Abby Faria. I loved them sort of breaking down what had transpired with Edmund in order to see what actually took place, to sort of peel back the curtain so he knew who the conspirators actually were, what their motivations were, and the love that they had for one another. And to see Faria want better for Edmund was fantastic. For him to say, I'm giving you access to this treasure, but promise me that you'll live a life that isn't based on vengeance, but it's based on in love, and that you'll start fresh. And Edmund denies him that. Literally his dying wish. He denies him that he's not going to spend this fortune on vengeance. And then the story kind of unravels from there. And there are a lot of threads in the story. You follow a lot of different individuals, a lot of characters and plot lines that are all interwoven. And Edmund is the puppet master. He has orchestrated the entire thing. And so the end of this book is one of the greatest endings of all time. Might be the most brilliant ending that I've ever read. It is so well thought out, and the finality of each character, I think, was perfect, in my personal opinion. So did I have a couple of issues with it? Yes. But it is still number 2 on my top 10 list of the year, and it's going to be in my top 10 list of all time, without a doubt. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas is one of the best books of all time. And so now you may be wondering what could have beat out The Count of Monte Cristo. And if you've followed the channel at all, you kind of know what's coming. My year has been consumed with Sun Eater by Christopher Rocchio, and since I could only include one on this list, it is going to be Ashes of Man by Christopher Rocchio. So this is book number 5. Yes, number 5 in the Sun Eater series, and this has been my favorite by far. I think that each book got progressively better. Some of them were leaps and bounds better than the previous one. I will say, with the exception of Disquiet Gods, and at the time of recording this, I'm about 30% of the way through Shadows Upon Time. So take that for what it is, because I'm not quite done with the series yet, and maybe book 7 will beat out book number 5. I don't think so. It could, and I hope that it does. But there were some real emotional moments in book number 5 that kind of wrecked me. A lot of which that I did not see coming, and I genuinely didn't know that Rocchio was willing to take some of those risks, because they're pretty polarizing events that take place. I think I've seen several people that have complained about the direction that he took, and I'm trying to be as spoiler-free as possible because it is book number 5 in the series. But if you're wanting like epic sci-fi and epic fantasy, this is the perfect blend of the two. I'm trying to be as spoiler-free as possible. So the first 4 books I did really enjoy. They're some of my favorite books of all time. And this is one of my favorite series of all time. The first 4 books there was a lot of political intrigue going on. They were action-packed, and the big moments that you had were big, epic, like battle scenes and things that occurred in those battle scenes, which, not to diminish those at all because they were great, but it seemed like some of the emotional impacts that I was looking for weren't as present or at the forefront as they were in book number 5. I think my tastes have matured quite a bit over the past few years, and I've gotten to the point to where I could actually skip battle scenes a lot of the time. I'm really looking for a lot of character growth and character development in those big character moments more than anything. So while especially like Demon in White, I think Demon in White probably takes the cake for the amount of like physical moments that take place, those big epic moments. There's 2 in particular that were like absolutely perfect. However, the ending of Ashes of Man, maybe I shouldn't say that. That's a pretty big spoiler. The emotional impact at the end of Ashes of Man hit harder than all of the epic impacts of the other 4 books combined, in my opinion. And I know that I'm actually one of the outliers. I think most people love Demon and White more, or Kingdoms of Death. I do love those books still, but Ashes of Man just takes the cake. It's my favorite book in the Sun Eater series at the time of recording this. And so that's why it has to be number 1, because my year, it's been the year of Sun Eater for me, which if you would ask me in January or really up until May, I would have said that I'm not even going to read that. But I'm glad that I've been proven wrong, because my favorite book of the year and one of my favorite books of all time is Ashes of Man by Christopher Ruocchio. So guys, that's the top 10 books that I read in the year 2025. If you wanted to throw some honorable mentions in there, it would be books by the same author. So like Golden Sun was really good. Obviously all of the other Sun Eater books, and some of A.M. Wiley's books, some of Larry Correia's books, so on and so forth. So that's why I didn't add the honorable mentions at the beginning, because it would have given away my list. But man, this has been a great reading year. I have had just a ton of fun. October was probably my best reading month, because I don't think I read a book that was below like 4.5 stars for me. Fantastic reading month. But yeah, as at the time of recording this, we're wrapping up 2025. It's been, just by looking at this list, it's been a great year. And when I went back and I looked at all the books that I read in 2025, there weren't really many that I either regret reading or was even kind of mixed on. Most of them, I would say around 80 to 90% of the books that I read were between 4 and 5 stars. And so, I don't really have anything to complain about. So thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me. Guys, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It does help out, but more than anything, please share these videos with your Christian brothers and sisters, because my goal with this channel to be a good resource to my brothers and sisters in Christ, so that maybe we can spend our time, money, and energy a little more wisely on things that honor the Lord. Guys, let me know down in the comment section below, what were some of your favorite books of the year, or better yet, make a video, post it, tag me in it. I would love to see it. So again, thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you on the next one.